Here's mistake number 6, and this is where it gets really interesting, because this one is invisible to most people. The opportunity cost of having too much in your emergency fund. We've been talking mostly about people who are underfunded, but there's a real and underappreciated mistake on the other side of the spectrum, being overfunded in your emergency fund at the expense of your investment portfolio. Let me paint you a picture. Marcus has been diligently saving for years. He's got $45,000 in his high-yield savings account labeled emergency fund. His monthly expenses are $4,200, so he's got more than 10 months covered. He's proud of this. He feels secure. He sleeps well. What Marcus hasn't done is maximize his 401k contributions or open a Roth IRA. He's contributing 4% to his 401k to get the employer match, but not a penny more because he wants to keep building that savings cushion. Here's the math on that decision over 20 years. The difference between his actual situation, $45,000 in a high-yield savings account earning 4.75%, and an optimized situation, $20,000 in emergency fund, $25,000 in index fund investments, over 20 years is significant. His savings account will grow that $25,000 to roughly $62,000 at 4.75% over 20 years. A diversified stock market index fund, historically averaging 7 to 8% annually after inflation, would grow that same $25,000 to roughly $96,000 to $107,000 over 20 years. That's a $34,000 to $45,000 difference on that one chunk of money alone. And that's before accounting for the annual contributions he's missing out on by not maxing his Roth IRA or increasing his 401k contributions. The emergency fund does not have zero opportunity cost. Every dollar that sits in savings is a dollar not compounding in an investment account. Now, up to the right level, that's a completely worthwhile trade. The insurance value of the emergency fund justifies the lower return. But beyond the right level, you're paying for insurance you don't need. You're overinsured on your financial downside and underinvested in your financial upside. The sweet spot is having enough to genuinely cover realistic emergencies without tying up capital that should be building wealth. For most people, that sweet spot is somewhere between 4 and 8 months of actual, carefully calculated expenses, adjusted for whether you're a renter or homeowner, whether you have dependents, and how stable and replaceable your income is. Mistake number 7. And this one is about psychology more than math, but I'd argue the psychological mistakes in personal finance are almost always more costly than the mathematical ones. People treat the emergency fund like a failure. I've had countless conversations with people who know intellectually that they should build an emergency fund, but there's this deep underlying resistance to it. And when you dig into it, a lot of the time it comes from this belief, conscious or not, that having money sitting in a savings account, not invested, not working, is somehow a sign of financial timidity, that real wealth builders put everything in the market, that the emergency fund is training wheels. And social media has made this so much worse. You go online and you see people talking about putting everything into index funds, into real estate, into crypto, into individual stocks. Nobody is posting about their high-yield savings account. Nobody is making YouTube thumbnails about their 6-month emergency fund. It feels boring. It feels like the financially conservative choice rather than the wealth-building choice. But here's what most people don't realize about what happens to people who skip the emergency fund and go straight to investing. When an emergency hits, and it always does eventually, people without emergency funds have basically 2 choices. They can pull money out of their investment accounts, or they can go into debt. Pulling from investment accounts isn't just about losing the principal. You might be selling at a loss if the market is down. If it's a retirement account, you're paying taxes plus a 10% penalty on early withdrawal. A $10,000 emergency can cost you $13,000 to $15,000 when you factor in the tax hit and penalty. Or it can cost you far more than that in long-term lost compounding if you pull from a Roth or 401k in their 30s or 40s. Going into debt means high-interest consumer debt, usually credit card debt at 20 to 28% APY. The average American who ends up in credit card debt because they had an emergency they couldn't cover takes approximately 29 months to pay it off, according to Value Penguin research from 2023. On a $5,000 emergency that goes on a credit card at 22% APY with minimum payments, you're looking at somewhere between $1,200 and $1,800 in interest. That's money that is gone, not invested, gone. The emergency fund isn't the boring, cautious, timid choice. The emergency fund is what allows you to invest aggressively and confidently everywhere else in your financial life, because you know a $4,000 car repair isn't going to derail you. It's what keeps you from panic selling your index fund when life goes sideways. It's the foundation that makes everything else possible. The people who skip the foundation to build the walls faster end up with a house that collapses. Mistake number 8. Nobody talks about this one: inflation erosion. If you built your emergency fund 3 or 4 years ago and you haven't recalculated it since, there's a significant chance your emergency fund is smaller in real terms than it was when you set it up. Here's why. From 2021 to 2023, the United States experienced the highest inflation rates in 40 years. The cumulative CPI increase from January 2020 to January 2024 was approximately 20.3%, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That means something that cost $1,000 in 2020 costs roughly $1,200 today. If your emergency fund target was $18,000 in 2020 and your savings account has $18,000 today, you're actually underfunded by about $3,600 in real purchasing power terms, not because you spent anything, just because inflation happened around you. This is a real and consistent erosion of your safety net that requires periodic attention. Your emergency fund target isn't a number you set once. It's a number you should recalculate at minimum once a year, and any time you have a major life change: new home, new job, new family member, significant change in your monthly expenses. Mistake number 9, and this one is a big one for anyone in their 20s or early 30s. Young people, especially with no dependents and good job prospects, significantly overestimate how much emergency fund they need and use that as a reason to delay building it at all. Here's what I mean. I've talked to people who say something like, "I know I should build an emergency fund, but I need $20,000 minimum, and I'm nowhere near that, so I've just been focusing on paying off my car first." Or, "I'll start building the emergency fund once I get this promotion." And the thinking is not irrational on its face. The problem is that the all-or-nothing framing leads to nothing because $20,000 feels so far away that people don't start, and then they have zero emergency fund for years, which means the first time something goes wrong, it's back to credit card debt. Here's what actually works. You build the emergency fund in tiers. Tier 1, $1,000. This is your first target. Not 6 months, not $20,000, $1,000. This covers the most common minor emergencies: a car repair, an unexpected vet bill, a medical copay, without touching debt. Get to $1,000 as fast as humanly possible. For most people with any kind of income, this should take weeks, not months. Tier 2, 1 month of expenses. Once you hit $1,000, you continue contributing to the emergency fund until you have 1 full month of expenses covered. This is your first real safety net. Tier 3, 3 months. This is the level where you've significantly reduced your financial vulnerability. For someone in their 20s with stable employment, no dependents, and no owned home, this is arguably sufficient as a working emergency fund. Not the long-term target, but sufficient for now. Tier 4, the full target for your life stage. This is where you eventually want to land, 4 to 8 months depending on your specific circumstances. The sweet spot is having enough to genuinely cover realistic emergencies without tying up capital that should be building wealth. For most people, that sweet spot is somewhere between 4 and 8 months of actual, carefully calculated expenses, adjusted for whether you're a renter or homeowner, whether you have dependents, and how stable and replaceable your income is. Okay, let's talk about mistake number 10, because I've been building to this one. People treat the emergency fund as the endpoint instead of the launch pad. There's this phenomenon I've noticed where people work really hard to build their emergency fund, hit their target, feel a huge sense of accomplishment, and then plateau. The monthly contribution to savings kind of drifts away. They feel financially responsible because they have their emergency fund, and then a few years go by and they wonder why their net worth isn't really moving. The emergency fund is not the end point, it is the base camp. It's what you build so that you can safely do everything else: maximize retirement accounts, build taxable investment accounts, save for a down payment, eliminate high-interest debt aggressively, eventually create income-producing assets. The emergency fund makes all of that possible. It removes the fear that makes people too timid with their money. It removes the need to keep excessive cash in low-return accounts everywhere. It gives you permission to take calculated risks because you know the floor is there. I want you to think about your finances like a building. The foundation has to come first. Imagine this. It's a Tuesday morning, you're sitting at your kitchen table drinking your coffee, and your phone rings. It's your mechanic. Your car needs a new transmission, $3,200. And in that moment, your stomach drops. Not because you don't have the money, but because you do have the money, and you realize you're about to wipe out basically everything you've saved in the last 8 months. And then, about 6 weeks later, your water heater decides it's done. Another $1,100. Gone. And suddenly, you're back to zero. Again. And you're sitting there thinking, what is even the point? If that story felt a little too familiar, you're not alone. According to a 2023 Federal Reserve report, nearly 37% of Americans say they couldn't cover a $400 emergency without borrowing money or selling something. $400! That's not a transmission. That's not a water heater. That's a parking ticket and a trip to urgent care in the same week. But here's the thing, and this is what this entire video is about. The problem isn't just that people don't have emergency funds. The real problem is that even the people who do have emergency funds are making mistakes that are quietly, slowly costing them thousands of dollars, and most of them have no idea it's happening. My name is John, and I spend way too much time thinking about emergency funds and the psychology behind why people handle financial uncertainty the way they do. If you're someone who's tried to build a financial cushion but keeps feeling like you're running in place, or if you've got money sitting somewhere labeled emergency fund, but you've got a nagging feeling you might be doing it wrong, make sure you hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it ends up helping you out, because today we're going deep on this. So let me start by challenging something you've probably heard 100 times. Save 3 to 6 months of expenses in an emergency fund. You've heard that, right? Maybe from a financial advisor, maybe from a personal finance YouTube channel, maybe from your parents. And it sounds reasonable. It sounds responsible. 3 to 6 months. Got it. Here's what most people don't realize. That advice, in the way most people apply it, is responsible for some of the biggest financial mistakes Americans are making right now. Not because it's wrong exactly, but because it's dangerously incomplete. And when people follow incomplete advice, they end up making decisions that feel smart but actually leave them exposed, underprepared, or quietly losing money in ways they never see coming. We're going to talk about all of it today. The wrong amount, the wrong accounts, the wrong mental frameworks, and the wrong timing. And by the end of this video, you're going to look at your emergency fund completely differently. Let's get into it. Mistake number 1, and this one's going to sting a little, is that most people have no idea how much they actually need. And I don't mean that as an insult. I mean it literally. When people say 3 to 6 months of expenses, almost nobody actually does the math correctly. They guess. They pick a round number that feels safe. They see their bank account hit $10,000 and think, okay, I think I'm good. But are they? Here's what the math actually looks like. Let's take a real example. Sarah is 34, she rents an apartment, she has a car payment, she's got a dog, and she works as a marketing manager at a mid-sized company. She figures her monthly expenses are around $3,500, so she aims for 6 months. That's $21,000. Seems reasonable. But wait, let's actually look at what her monthly expenses are. Rent is $1,450, car payment is $380,
Car insurance is $160. Groceries is $320. Utilities is $140. Phone is $85. Internet is $65. Dog food, vet, incidentals is $120. Health insurance premium is $210. Subscriptions, Netflix, Spotify, gym, the one she keeps meaning to cancel, is $95. Gas is $180. Credit card minimum payment is $75. Add all that up and you get $3,280. Okay, so she was close. But here's what she forgot. She didn't include the expenses that aren't monthly but are absolutely going to happen. Her car registration is $220 a year. Annual vet visit with vaccines is $340 a year. Her renter's insurance is $180 a year. Clothing and household items she replaces periodically, probably $600 a year conservatively. That's $1,340 a year in irregular but completely predictable expenses. Divided by 12, that's another $112 a month she should be factoring in. Real monthly burn rate closer to $3,392. But here's where it really gets interesting. When most people think emergency fund covers my expenses, they're thinking about their current expenses. But if you lose your job, which is one of the main scenarios an emergency fund is designed for, your expenses don't stay the same. They can actually go up in certain areas. Health insurance. If you're currently on an employer plan and you lose your job, you're either paying for COBRA, which can run $600 to $800 a month for an individual, or you're navigating the marketplace on your own. In 2024, the average unsubsidized individual marketplace premium was around $560 a month, according to KFF. So now you've potentially added $350 to $550 in health insurance costs that weren't in your original calculation. And job searches take longer than people expect. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that in 2023, the average duration of unemployment for people who were actually looking for work was about 20 weeks. That's 5 months, not 3, 5. And that's the average, meaning plenty of people are at 7, 8, 9 months. So when Sarah does the real math, accounting for COBRA coverage, realistic job search timeline, and those irregular but completely predictable expenses, her actual 6-month emergency fund target should be closer to $23,500, not $21,000. That's a $2,500 gap, and that gap in a real emergency is the difference between making it and having to put $2,500 on a credit card at 24% interest. Now you might be thinking, okay, John, that's a $2,500 difference. That doesn't seem catastrophic, and on its own, you're right. But here's where the compounding effect of small miscalculations starts to add up, and we're just getting started. Mistake number 2 is where I see people lose the most money, and it's one that almost nobody talks about. People are keeping their emergency funds in the wrong accounts. Okay, let me back up. For years, decades honestly, the conventional wisdom was keep your emergency fund in a regular savings account at your primary bank. It's accessible, it's safe, it's there when you need it. And yeah, that used to make sense when all savings accounts paid basically nothing, 0.01%. You weren't missing much. But we are living in a completely different interest rate environment, and the gap between what a traditional bank savings account pays and what a high-yield savings account pays has become genuinely significant. Let me give you the numbers. As of early 2024, the national average on a traditional savings account was around 0.46%, according to the FDIC. Meanwhile, high-yield savings accounts, available at online banks like Marcus, Ally, SoFi, Capital One 360, were paying between 4.5 and 5% APY, some even higher. Let's run the math on what that difference actually means. Say you've got $15,000 in your emergency fund. Pretty solid, right? At 0.46% over 1 year, you earn $69 in interest. Cool. At 4.75% over that same year, you earn $712.50. That's a difference of $643.50 in 1 year, just from where you keep the money. Over 5 years, if you keep that $15,000 sitting at 0.46%, let's assume rates stay flat for simplicity. You've earned about $346. At 4.75%, even in a very simplified calculation without compounding, that's over $3,500, and the compounded version is even better. We're talking about a potential difference of $3,000 to $3,500 over 5 years just from the account choice. And look, I get it. People don't move their emergency fund to a high-yield savings account for a few reasons. One, inertia. The money is already somewhere, it's fine, they'll get to it. Two, they worry about accessibility. What if there's an emergency and they can't get the money fast enough? Three, some people genuinely don't know these accounts exist or that the rates are this different. Let's address the accessibility concern because it's the most common objection, and it's mostly a myth. High-yield savings accounts at reputable online banks typically allow transfers to your checking account in 1 to 3 business days. Some offer same-day or next-day transfers. And honestly, think about the last time you had a genuine emergency where you needed cash within the next 2 hours without any warning. Most emergencies, even urgent ones, give you at least 24 hours of lead time. Your car breaks down on Monday, you probably have until Tuesday afternoon to pay the mechanic. Your medical bill arrives, you have 30 days to pay it. Your water heater dies, you've got a day or two before the plumber shows up. There are exceptions. If you're worried about truly instantaneous access, keep $500 to $1,000 in your regular checking account as a first response buffer. But the bulk of your emergency fund, it should absolutely be earning you real money. The people who figure this out early and move their emergency fund to a high-yield savings account are quietly pocketing hundreds of dollars a year that other people